Good evening, welcome. So, what have we got? Tonight we're going to have a football night. And it being a football night and me being quite lazy about my analogies, it's going to be a game of two halves. We're going to have a short opening ceremony, but after that, the first half is going to be no less a star than Sam Cuthbert. You get a proper introduction, interviewing David, who's sitting next to him. David will give his experience of being a professional footballer and a legal luminary thereafter. And then second, we're going to have a discussion around the issues of regulation in the world of football, as we'll set up neatly for you there on a slide. And at the end, if there's time, patience and willing, we'll have some questions. So let me start with the introductions. Immediately to my right sits David Winnie. He heads up the sports department as a partner at Burlingtons Legal, but before that, he was a professional footballer and football manager and played at international level, managing as well, both domestically and in Iceland. So welcome, fellow athlete, David, that wasn't a joke, David Winnie. On our front row, just to the left as you're looking at it, is Lloyd Thomas. Lloyd is General Counsel at Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, having made that transfer after a spell at Arsenal and starting his professional career at Squire Patton Bowls. He's going to give insight into the realities of regulation to a top flying, literally seagulls flying, Premier League club. And we're particularly pleased that he's joined us this evening and very grateful for it on the night that the Seagulls fly in the Europa against AEK Athens. Welcome, Lloyd. Next to him, Dan McDonagh. He's an associate at Charles Russell Speechlys, who rebranded today. Excellent rebranding, I think. Who is building within that firm's sports department a really strong practice in sport regulation and governance. I've had the considerable pleasure of working alongside and for Dan in a whole range of disputes, none of which I can tell you about. They're really big, really important disputes, really impressive work. And he has a magnificent mastery of minutiae and is, from my own experience at least, a great pleasure to work with. So welcome, Dan. Thank you for coming. And from Outer Temple Chambers, to my left, off camera, bashful, secretive, Sarah Crowther, King's Counsel. When I joined these chambers 4 years ago, happy day I hear you sing, she interviewed me. So you know she has absolutely excellent judgment. And she is a rising star in the world of sport, acting and advising in safeguarding and regulatory disputes, and more recently has become chair of the British Horse Racing Authority's judicial panel. I've had a considerable pleasure. I really mean that because she's sitting next to me and appearing in front. After her, Sam Cuthbert, a remarkable, industrious and hard-working sports lawyer, who only this week has been broadcasting interviews to CNN and breakfasting with Dylan Hartley. And I wrote that. The ink was barely dry on it when I wrote that. When I looked on the way over in my cab, and there he is, popping up again, Jack in the Box, giving an audience to interview to another sports magazine. Rarely off the media. We are very pleased he's made up the time to join us in between other commitments. Was that big enough? I did anything. All right. And then, welcome to you. What a absolutely magnificent audience. Leading sports lawyers. I won't name you, you know who you are. In-house counsel for clubs and leagues. Thank you all for coming. And last, and very much leaves me, I head up the sports group here. I act for and I advise governing bodies around the world in corruption, anti-doping, safeguarding on-field disputes in the world of football. I'm on the FA judicial panel, the EFA panel, and I act for parties in Rule K arbitrations and as a Rule K arbitrator. Always big and important cases and always secret, and I can't talk about. Check it out on the legend, still good. And in contrast to this esteemed panel, I am your compare. But before I do that, and do the panel session. I'm going to hand over to Sam, and he's going to give us about half an hour of the life and times of the great David Winnie.
Thanks, Louis. Now, I should say before we go any further that I think everyone will get most out of this if it's a sort of interactive session. So if at any point there is a question, don't hesitate to put your hand up, and we'll try and build that into the Q&A over the next half hour or so. And hopefully there are some photographs to aid us along. These photographs are of David in his playing days, and there's also a photograph of him at the end, professional headshot done, and I think we'll all agree when we get there that he has aged incredibly well. So David, we obviously had the introduction from Louis there. Your playing career spanned 1983 to 2000, and you were playing for St Mirren, you played for Aberdeen, you played in Iceland, you played for Reykjavik, to name a few. Would you be able to begin by giving us a sense of the regulatory landscape in football when you first started your professional career in the 1980s?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me in the back, ladies and gents, before. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what I would say is the regulatory landscape then, when I started playing, excuse me, was completely different from today. For one thing, a football player whose contract was finished, you couldn't leave the club. Not unlike today, where players will simply wind down their contracts in the hope of either getting a better deal or a move to another club. When I played, that didn't happen. The club owned you body and soul. If you wanted to leave, there had to be an agreement between obviously your current club and the buying club as to the transfer fee, or alternatively, you could leave on a free transfer. But that was done in very, very certain circumstances. You have to remember as well that in my playing days, players were considered assets, as it were, in the balance sheet. You come into the club, you could be sold and make money for the club. After, which we'll come on to, the Bosman case, players flipped over to the liabilities side of the balance sheet. So there was that mindset with clubs, in that players are assets to be used, for want of a better word, and sold. Just after Bosman, FIFA have set up an independent judicial body within FIFA to sort out disputes, and from that, and it made sense as well. Yeah, a kind of arbitral body, because we had all these disputes going on a worldwide basis. I think at 211 or 15, whatever it might be, national associations with their own forums for setting it up for solving issues. It was in FIFA's interest to bring this closer to home, so that the decisions they were getting, or that were coming out of FIFA, were consistent.
So that's the dispute resolution chamber that was established in 2001.
Yeah,
and you'd say that was that had its roots in the Bosman decision.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, as I said right at the start, Bosman kicked everything off from here. Without Bosman, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't. I don't think I've had all of the various progressions in the game that we have these days. Bosman kicked it off, and I can't overstate the effect that it had on football clubs and football players. Maybe not positive all the time, but it had a massive effect to the game. And from a dispute point of view and a regulatory point of view, UEFA and FIFA have had to literally bang heads and say, right, this is happening, how do we deal with it? And we've had the various forums and dispute resolution forums that have been set up since.
And you talked a bit about agents previously,
Mhm.
and the influence that they've sort of gone on to have on all stakeholders really in the game. Could you give us a kind of more of a granular breakdown of how you see the rise of agents effectively stemming from the Bosman decision? And what does that progression look like?
I mean, prior to Bosman, there was very, very few agents, and they really weren't needed because clubs held the upper hand and they knew it. So you were getting this, and that is it. If you don't like it, tough. There's nothing you can do about it. With few exceptions, that was it. Take it or leave it, and there's nowhere you could go. After Bosman, it shifted completely. Players then held the upper hand, and particularly I'm talking about the big end players, with the top clubs, not really tier two, but the really at the top of the tree. These players started to cash in, and I think probably as a consequence of the treatment that they'd had previously, they didn't give a damn about clubs, frankly. This is, I'm taking this from experience, that we're going to take everything that we can from clubs financially and whatever it might be, because you've been doing that to us for the last 100 years. With that, and with the amount of money and other things involved in a game, agents started to come in. You had the likes of your, I think it's Jorge Mendes, the Portuguese chap, and one or two others really started to become super agents, getting clients all around Europe. And it was a direct consequence of Bosman. And I know there's a few club people here, you'll know what has happened with agents since and the practices that have taken place. Hence now we've got the new FIFA agents regs that have come in. Have they abused the system? I don't know, but I'll leave that open. But yeah, to answer, agents were a direct consequence of Bosman.
Interesting. So is your sense of it that then Bosman empowers the player, and that has now that empowerment has now effectively shifted onto the agents?
Yeah, players needed specific advice because contracts became more sophisticated. The best will in the world, players weren't able to deal with that. Plus, because the market had opened up, it was like a worldwide market. Players needed agents to effectively put their name out. I'm available, come and get me. So it was a twofold thing. One, the market had exploded, and two, contracts, money, and such like had come into the game, and there was a need for, I was going to say advisors, but a middleman, really.
No, so we've obviously discussed the shift in power from clubs to players, and you mentioned the new regulations, and there was the news today about the agents regulation exam that seems to have been a total nightmare. Do you think that the imposition of those regulations, and notwithstanding there are challenges in Germany and various other countries, do you think the imposition of those regulations is or serves to rein in the power that agents seem to have taken on?
Without a doubt. I think there was a survey done by FIFA a few years back, and of all of the transactions, the international transactions that had taken place, I think there was only, and this was kind of 2014-15 before the agents regs changed again. I think less than a third had been undertaken by licensed agents. Right. So it was a huge swathe of work done by unlicensed agents. And FIFA, and it has its detractors, but it is, and it does try to look after the interests of participants, the players and the clubs. And by these new regulations, it's trying to do that again. How successful it will be, I don't know, because it's a mammoth task, but that's what it's trying to do.
It seems that the other obvious regulatory point to bring out in terms of how things have changed over the last 30 to 40 years is the rise of women's football, which doesn't seem to be waning in the popularity that it's getting. So do you think that there are kind of specific regulatory issues to the women's game, and specific regulatory problems that need addressing?
I mean, I don't think anything in particular. I think they are being addressed in terms of rights, childbirth, and all of that type of thing. I think they are being addressed. Again, I stand to be corrected here. But there, I mean, we all know that this was with Jenny Hermoso and Rubiales. That has taken the women's game, particularly in Spain. It's a major blow for Spanish football, and it's taken it back to this kind of machista type time in Spain. And we've spoken before about this, that this could be the Bosman moment for women's football, to finally say, this is what we're about. Are we going to do things properly or not? FIFA's taken a stance. Spanish Football Federation has finally got its finger at its backside. But it's the ramifications of it, not just within Spain, but globally. How will it go? I don't have the answer for that, but to an extent, it's another Bosman moment for women's football.
So you don't necessarily think that it's a sign that we need tougher regulatory processes. You think that it's a sign there is a seismic shift going on within women's football.
I think so. I mean, it's a shame really, because the national team, the women's team, they should have been lauded for their achievement in winning the World Cup, but that's been forgotten in all of this. And it was like Bosman. There's a lot of parallels. How this will end and when it will end with the Spaniards, I don't know, but I do think there is parallels between this and Bosman, and there definitely will be changes after this. There has to be. It cannot sit comfortably where it is at the moment. The situation in Spain has proved that. And the women's game, one, it deserves it, and two, it demands it. If we're going to do things properly, it has to. We have to have equal pay for a kick-off, for a start. How we achieve that, I don't know. I really don't know, but changes are afoot.
No doubt. So we've obviously spent a lot of the Q&A this far reflecting on your career of regulation in football over the course of your career. Have you got predictions for the big regulatory hurdles that we need to be looking at going forwards?
I mean, we've spoken about the women's game and what comes out of the Jenny Hermoso thing. I'm not concerned about that. I think we've got this situation now where you've got players going to the Middle East. How that will impact the game globally, again, I don't know, but there is going to be an effect. I don't think it's going to be short-lived. I think it's here to stay, because those countries in the Middle East want to make a statement. They want to get involved. They want to become part of the footballing family, and they're setting a marker. And it's how the market worldwide now deals with that, both commercially and legally, to an extent. How it deals with that. I don't know and ethically. Yeah, exactly.
That's why you call an expert witness, because he's lived it. He knows everything about it. Thank you very much. Should we go on to our panel session?
I think so, yeah. Thanks.
No, my pleasure.
So you can clap if you want.